This isn't a mere historical observation. It was a strategic miscalculation of monumental proportions, one that fundamentally shaped the outcome of World War II. From the very outset, Adolf Hitler and his high command harbored a profound disdain for American military capability, dismissing the United States as a nation of pacifistic, materialistic civilians, utterly incapable of projecting significant military power across two vast oceans. They believed American industry, while large, was geared solely for consumer goods, lacking the discipline, the technical expertise, and the raw will to convert swiftly and effectively into an arsenal of war. This belief, rooted in a mixture of ideological prejudice and a critical lack of understanding of American economic and social structures, would prove to be one of the Third Reich's most catastrophic errors. To truly grasp the magnitude of this underestimation, we must first transport ourselves back to the pre-war era, to the late 1930s. The United States, having navigated the Great Depression, was indeed largely isolationist. Its standing army was minuscule, its air force a fraction of the Luftwaffe, and its navy, while powerful, was unprepared for a global conflict. Europe was descending into chaos, but America's focus was primarily internal. Yet beneath this veneer of unpreparedness lay an industrial capacity that was, quite simply, unparalleled in human history. The sheer scale of American manufacturing, its innovative spirit, and its vast reserves of natural resources represented a dormant titan. Germany, conversely, had been rearming overtly since 1935, channeling its entire economy towards military expansion. Its leaders saw their highly specialized, quality-focused production methods as superior, believing that their technical prowess and the ideological fervor of their workforce would outmatch any potential democratic opponent. They viewed American mass production as inherently inferior, suitable for automobiles, but not for precision weaponry. This was a critical flaw in their analysis. The German war machine, formidable as it was, operated on a fundamentally different paradigm. It favored bespoke, often over-engineered, high-quality individual units. Think of the Tiger tank, a marvel of engineering, but complex, expensive, and slow to produce. This approach, while yielding impressive individual weapons, was inherently unsuited for sustained total war against an opponent with truly limitless industrial potential. The American model, forged in the crucible of Ford's assembly lines and the demands of a vast domestic market, emphasized standardization, interchangeability of parts, and rapid, high-volume output. This wasn't just about making more. It was about making them faster, more reliably, and in a way that allowed for continuous improvement and adaptation. The Nazis simply could not conceive of a nation converting its entire economic engine from building millions of cars and refrigerators to building tens of thousands of tanks, aircraft, and ships in a matter of years, not decades. Their racial theories also played a part, convincing them that a multi-ethnic democratic society lacked the cohesion and resolve to wage such a war. They saw American diversity as a weakness, not a strength, and mistook individual liberty for societal decadence. When the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, finally propelled the United States into the global conflict, the transformation began in earnest. The sleeping giant awoke with a shockwave that reverberated through every factory floor, every farm, and every household across the nation. President Franklin D. Roosevelt's call for America to become the arsenal of democracy was not mere rhetoric. It was a concrete directive that unleashed an unprecedented mobilization of resources, manpower, and ingenuity. The War Production Board, established in January 1942, became the central nervous system of this transformation, tasked with overseeing the conversion of civilian industries to war production, allocating raw materials, and coordinating the efforts of millions of workers. Key figures like William S. Knudsen, a Danish immigrant who had risen to become president of General Motors, and Donald M. Nelson, a Sears, Roebuck and Company executive, brought their vast experience in industrial management and mass marketing to bear on the monumental task of retooling an entire economy for war. The sheer scale of this conversion was staggering. Automobile plants that once churned out sedans and trucks quickly pivoted to producing tanks, aircraft engines, and military vehicles. Textile mills switched from making civilian clothing to manufacturing uniforms and parachutes. Appliance factories produced components for aircraft and ships. The concept of mass production, perfected in the civilian sector, was now applied with ferocious intensity to every facet of military hardware. Factories that previously built thousands of cars a day were now tasked with delivering hundreds of aircraft or dozens of tanks. The assembly line, once an icon of consumerism, became the backbone of America's war effort. This wasn't a simple reorientation. It was a fundamental re-engineering of the entire industrial landscape, driven by a national imperative. A crucial element of this transformation was the standardization of design and production. Unlike the Germans, who often had multiple manufacturers producing slightly different versions of the same weapon system, leading to logistical nightmares, the Americans prioritized commonality. Parts were interchangeable, designs were simplified for ease of manufacture, and production lines were optimized for speed and volume. This philosophy extended to everything from nuts and bolts to complex aircraft engines. It allowed for rapid scaling of production, easier maintenance in the field, and a more efficient supply chain. The sheer volume of raw materials available to the United States was another insurmountable advantage. With vast domestic reserves of coal, iron ore, oil, and other critical minerals, and access to global resources through its naval power, America faced none of the crippling resource shortages that plagued Germany and Japan throughout the war. While the Axis powers relied on synthetic fuels and rubber, or on resources acquired through conquest, the US could draw upon an almost inexhaustible natural bounty, further bolstering its industrial might. The American labor force also underwent a radical transformation. Millions of men joined the armed forces, creating a massive vacuum in the industrial sector. This void was filled by women, African Americans, and other minority groups who had previously been excluded from many industrial jobs. Rosie the Riveter became an iconic symbol of the millions of women who stepped into factories, shipyards, and aircraft plants, proving their capability and dedication. Training programs were established to rapidly equip these new workers with the skills needed for complex manufacturing tasks. The migration of workers to booming industrial centers led to rapid urbanization and significant social changes. But the overall effect was a monumental expansion of the skilled labor pool, capable of sustaining the unprecedented production demands. This societal mobilization, fueled by patriotism and a clear sense of purpose, was something the Nazis, with their rigid social hierarchies and racial prejudices, simply could not comprehend or replicate. Let's delve into the specific areas of production where American industrial might truly shone, starting with aircraft. In 1939, the United States produced just over 2,100 military aircraft. By 1944, that number had soared to nearly 96,400 aircraft in a single year. This was an increase of over 4,500%. The cumulative production from 1940 to 1945 totaled over 300,000 aircraft, a figure that dwarfed the combined output of Germany, Japan, and Great Britain. This wasn't just about quantity, it was about adapting and evolving designs for mass production, while simultaneously pushing the boundaries of performance. Consider the CP-51 Mustang. Initially conceived as a British requirement for a long-range fighter, North American Aviation designed and built the prototype in just 117 days. While early versions were hampered by an underperforming Allison engine, Its true potential was unleashed when fitted with the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine produced under license by Packard in the United States. This combination transformed the Mustang into arguably the finest piston engine fighter of the war, capable of escorting bombers deep into German airspace. Its design was inherently suited for mass production, with relatively simple construction techniques and readily available materials. Factories like Inglewood, California and Dallas, Texas churned out thousands of Mustangs, each a testament to American design and manufacturing efficiency. By the end of the war, over 15,000 P-51s had been built. Then there were the bombers, the B-17 Flying Fortress and the B-24 Liberator, formed the backbone of the Allied strategic bombing campaign against Germany. The B-17, produced by Boeing, Douglas and Lockheed Vega, was renowned for its ruggedness and ability to absorb damage. The B-24, designed by Consolidated Aircraft, was produced in even greater numbers, becoming the most produced multi-engine aircraft in history, with over 18,000 units manufactured. Its spacious bomb bay, long range and high payload made it incredibly versatile. Factories like Ford's Willow Run plant, a colossal facility stretching for miles, epitomized the American approach to bomber production. Willow Run, initially a greenfield site, was designed from the ground up to mass-produce B-24s using automotive assembly line techniques. At its peak, it produced a B-24 every 63 minutes, an astonishing feat of industrial engineering. The scale of these operations, the speed with which complex aircraft were assembled, and the sheer volume of output was simply unimaginable to the German planners, who believed their handcrafted aircraft were superior. Fighter aircraft like the P-47 Thunderbolt and the F-6F Hellcat further illustrate this point. The P-47, a massive, rugged fighter bomber, was built to withstand incredible punishment and deliver devastating firepower. Over 15,000 Thunderbolts were produced by Republic Aviation. The F-6F Hellcat, Grumman's response to the Japanese Zero, was designed with ease of manufacture and maintenance in mind, leading to rapid production and deployment. It became the dominant carrier-borne fighter in the Pacific, accounting for a staggering number of Japanese aircraft kills. Over 12,000 Hellcats were built, often at a rate of several hundred per month. The ability of American industry to rapidly design, refine, and mass-produce these high-performance aircraft in numbers that dwarfed the enemy's output was a decisive factor in both the European and Pacific theaters. Moving to naval power, the American industrial machine achieved what many considered impossible, the construction of a two-ocean navy from scratch, while simultaneously replacing losses and supplying global convoys. The demand was immense, driven by the Battle of the Atlantic, the war in the Pacific, and the need to project power across vast distances. The most iconic symbol of this naval production miracle was undoubtedly the Liberty ship. Prior to the war, merchant ship construction was a slow, labor-intensive process. As U-boat attacks began to decimate Allied shipping, a desperate need for cargo vessels emerged. Henry J. Kaiser, a construction magnate with no prior shipbuilding experience, revolutionized the industry. His shipyards, particularly in Richmond, California, applied prefabrication and welding techniques on an unprecedented scale. Ship sections were built in different workshops and then brought together for rapid assembly on the slipways. The time it took to build a Liberty ship plummeted from over 200 days to as little as 42 days, with one record-breaking ship, the Robert E. Peary, being launched in just 4 days, 15 hours and 29 minutes. By the end of the war, American shipyards had delivered over 2,700 Liberty ships, and later, the slightly improved Victory ships. These vessels, though not glamorous, were the lifeblood of the Allied war effort, transporting troops, tanks, aircraft, ammunition, and supplies across the globe. Without them, the logistical challenges of fighting a global war would have been insurmountable. The sheer volume of these simple, rugged cargo ships effectively nullified the U-boat threat and ensured that the Allied armies received the material sustenance they needed to fight. Beyond cargo ships, the US Navy itself underwent an explosive expansion. The Essex-class aircraft carriers represented the pinnacle of American naval engineering and production. These fast, powerful carriers were designed for both offensive and defensive operations, capable of operating hundreds of aircraft. Despite their complexity, 24 Essex-class carriers were ordered and 17 were completed and commissioned during the war, with an additional 7 completed shortly after. This was an astonishing rate of production for such massive and sophisticated warships. Each carrier represented hundreds of thousands of man-hours and vast quantities of steel, yet they were built faster than any other nation could dream of. Combined with the production of numerous smaller escort carriers, CVEs, destroyers, destroyer escorts, and submarines, the US Navy became the largest and most powerful fleet in history, capable of projecting power across 2 major theaters simultaneously. The sheer number of warships and merchant vessels pouring out of American shipyards was an undeniable testament to its industrial supremacy, a factor that the Axis powers had fundamentally failed to account for in their strategic planning. On land, the story was much the same. While German tanks like the Panther and Tiger possessed superior individual characteristics in terms of armor and gunpowder, the American approach focused on producing a reliable, easily maintained, and sufficiently effective tank in overwhelming numbers, the M4 Sherman. Over 49,000 Sherman tanks and their variants were produced during the war, a figure that dwarfed the combined production of all German medium and heavy tanks. The Sherman was not without its flaws. Its relatively high profile made it an easier target. Its initial 75mm gun struggled against the frontal armor of late-war German heavy tanks, and the initial ammunition stowage design led to a perception of it being prone to brewing up when hit. However, these weaknesses are often overemphasized in isolation. The Sherman's true strength lay in its reliability, its ease of maintenance, its speed, and crucially, its sheer ubiquity. It could be produced rapidly by a diverse range of manufacturers, including Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, and Baldwin Locomotive Works. Its modular design allowed for various improvements and modifications in the field, including upgunning to the more potent 70mm and later 90mm guns, as well as the British 17-pounder, transforming it into the Sherman Firefly. Furthermore, American combined arms doctrine recognized that tanks rarely fought alone. Supported by vast numbers of artillery, infantry, and air power, the Sherman proved to be an effective weapon. Its mechanical reliability meant more Shermans were operational at any given time, a critical advantage over the notoriously complex and maintenance-intensive German tanks. The sheer weight of numbers allowed Allied commanders to absorb losses and maintain offensive momentum, something the Germans, with their dwindling tank forces, found increasingly difficult. For every Tiger tank, there were dozens, if not hundreds, of Shermans available to the Allies. Beyond tanks, the production of military vehicles was another area where American industry excelled. The ubiquitous Jeep, Willys MB, and Ford GPW, a marvel of utilitarian design, became the symbol of Allied mobility. Over 640,000 Jeeps were produced, serving in every theater, performing countless roles from reconnaissance to ambulance duty. Its ruggedness, versatility, and simplicity of design made it an invaluable asset. Similarly, the Deuce and a Half GMC CCKW2 1-2-ton truck was the backbone of Allied logistics, with over 560,000 units manufactured. These trucks, along with countless other specialized vehicles, provided the mobility necessary to sustain the lightning-fast advances across Europe and the Pacific. Without this torrent of reliable transportation, the Allied armies would have been bogged down, unable to exploit breakthroughs or supply their frontline troops. This focus on practical, reliable vehicles, produced in overwhelming numbers, stood in stark contrast to the more specialized and limited production of German transport, which often relied on captured vehicles and horse-drawn transport to supplement its motorized units. The production of Aachen artillery followed a similar trajectory. While German artillery was often of high quality, American factories churned out vast quantities of field guns, howitzers, and anti-tank guns. The M1 105mm howitzer, for example, was produced in tens of thousands, providing invaluable fire support for infantry and tanks. The development and mass production of advanced anti-aircraft artillery, like the Bofors 40mm gun, produced under license, and the Hispano-Suiza 20mm cannon, were critical in defending against enemy air attacks and later became formidable ground support weapons. The ability to equip every division with overwhelming artillery support and to replenish losses rapidly provided the Allies with a decisive advantage in firepower that the Germans, with their limited and diminishing industrial capacity, could not hope to match. In terms of small arms and ammunition, the American industrial machine was equally prolific. The M1 Garand rifle became the standard infantry weapon described by General George S. Patton as the greatest battle implement ever devised. Its semi-automatic action gave American infantrymen a significant firepower advantage over their bolt-action-equipped German and Japanese counterparts. Over 5.4 million M1 Garands were produced during the war. This was complemented by the M1 Carbine, a lightweight, easy-to-handle weapon with over 6.2 million units manufactured. Submachine guns like the Thompson and later the M3 Grease gun provided close-quarters firepower, while the Browning automatic rifle, BRR, served as a squad automatic weapon. The sheer quantity of these weapons, coupled with an almost limitless supply of ammunition, ensured that every American soldier was well equipped and had the means to engage the enemy effectively. The production of ammunition itself was a gargantuan undertaking, with factories across the nation churning out billions of rounds of various calibers, artillery shells and bombs. This seemingly endless supply allowed Allied forces to maintain a high rate of fire and sustain prolonged engagements, something that Axis forces, constantly facing shortages, could only dream of. The entire process was underpinned by a sophisticated and incredibly resilient logistics and supply chain. Fighting a global war across two major oceans and multiple continents presented unprecedented logistical challenges. The United States had to not only produce the materiel, but also transport it thousands of miles to the front lines. This required an intricate network of shipping lanes, port facilities, railroads, and road transport. The standardization of equipment and parts, championed by American industry, greatly simplified this task. A spare part for an M4 Sherman produced in Detroit would fit an M4 Sherman operating in France or the Philippines. This logistical efficiency was a direct consequence of the industrial philosophy of mass production and interchangeability. The Red Ball Express. In Europe, stands as a legendary example of American logistical ingenuity and determination. Following the D-Day landings and the subsequent breakout from Normandy, Allied armies advanced rapidly across France, often outrunning their supply lines. To address this critical shortage, an extraordinary trucking operation was organized, utilizing thousands of trucks and drivers, many of them African-American soldiers. The Red Ball Express operated around the clock on one-way loops, delivering essential supplies to the front. At its peak, it transported over 12,000 tons of supplies daily, making the rapid advance possible. This Herculean effort, combined with the continuous flow of Liberty ships across the Atlantic and the strategic use of railway networks, demonstrated that American industrial power was not just about production, but also about the ability to deliver that production to where it mattered most, precisely when it was needed. The ability to project and sustain massive military forces globally was a logistical triumph that no other nation could replicate. Now, let's turn our attention to the Axis powers and directly compare their industrial capabilities and philosophies with those of the United States. This contrast highlights the fundamental flaws in their strategic thinking and their underestimation of American potential. Germany, despite its early rearmament and initial military successes, harbored deep-seated inefficiencies and structural weaknesses in its industrial base. While German engineering was undeniably brilliant, producing iconic weapons like the Tiger tank, the Bf-109 fighter, and the U-boat, their production philosophy often prioritized quality, complexity, and bespoke design over mass production. This led to lower output numbers, higher costs, and increased maintenance demands. For instance, the Tiger I tank, while formidable, required immense resources and time to build, with only around 1,350 ever produced. Compare this to the nearly 50,000 Shermans. The German reliance on skilled labor for intricate, specialized tasks limited their ability to scale up production rapidly. Furthermore, German industrial planning was often fragmented and plagued by inter-service rivalries and Hitler's personal interference. Different branches of the military often had their own procurement agencies, leading to a lack of standardization and duplication of effort. Albert Speer's attempts to rationalize and centralize war production in the later years of the war did lead to impressive increases in output, particularly in 1944. But by then it was too little, too late. The cumulative effect of years of inefficient planning, coupled with the strategic bombing campaigns by the Allies and the relentless attrition on the Eastern Front, severely hampered Germany's ability to maintain its war effort. Germany also faced crippling shortages of strategic raw materials, relying heavily on conquered territories and the development of synthetic fuels and rubber, which were energy-intensive to produce and vulnerable to disruption. Their supply lines were constantly stretched and attacked, further exacerbating their resource problems. The myth of German industrial efficiency, often propagated by Nazi propaganda, crumbled under the harsh reality of total war against a truly industrialized global power. Japan's industrial base was even more limited than Germany's. While Japan achieved remarkable industrial growth in the decades leading up to the war, its economy was still relatively small compared to the Western powers. It lacked significant domestic reserves of critical raw materials like oil, iron ore, and rubber, making it highly dependent on imports, particularly from its newly conquered territories in Southeast Asia. This reliance on sea lanes for resources made Japan incredibly vulnerable to Allied submarine warfare and naval blockades. The Japanese focused their industrial output primarily on naval power and aircraft in the early stages of the war, producing high-quality but often fragile designs like the A6M0 fighter. However, their production capacity could not keep pace with the enormous losses inflicted by the US Navy in the Pacific. They struggled to replace lost ships and aircraft, and the quality of their late war production declined significantly due to material shortages and inexperienced labor. Their inability to mass-produce complex weaponry, coupled with their vulnerability to resource deprivation, sealed their fate against the overwhelming industrial might of the United States. The impact and consequences of America's industrial war machine were nothing short of decisive. The overwhelming material superiority provided by the United States fundamentally altered the balance of power on every front. From the deserts of North Africa to the beaches of Normandy, From the skies over Germany to the islands of the Pacific, Allied forces were consistently better equipped, better supplied, and numerically superior in almost every category of weaponry. This material advantage directly translated into strategic flexibility, operational resilience, and ultimately, victory. In the European theater, the sheer volume of American tanks, trucks, aircraft, and artillery enabled the rapid advances across France after D-Day and sustained the relentless pressure on the German war machine. The strategic bombing campaign, spearheaded by thousands of American bombers and escorted by hundreds of Mustangs, systematically dismantled German industrial capacity and infrastructure. The continuous flow of supplies across the Atlantic, protected by an expanding US Navy, ensured that Great Britain remained a viable base for operations and that the Soviet Union received critical aid through Lend-Lease, bolstering their own fight against the Germans. The arsenal of democracy proved to be exactly that, an inexhaustible wellspring of materiel that fueled the Allied war effort. In the Pacific, the rapid expansion of the US Navy, particularly its aircraft carrier fleet, allowed for the systematic island-hopping campaign that brought the war to Japan's doorstep. The endless stream of Hellcats, Corsairs, and dauntless dive bombers, coupled with the massive logistical support provided by Liberty ships and naval auxiliaries, overwhelmed the Japanese defenders. The ability to replace losses rapidly, often within weeks or months, while Japan struggled to replace theirs, was a critical factor in the Pacific War's attrition. The ultimate demonstration of this industrial power was the development of the atomic bomb, a scientific and industrial undertaking of unprecedented scale and complexity, which brought the war to a definitive end. The underestimation by the Nazis, and indeed by the Japanese, of American industrial war potential was thus a fatal error. They misread the American character, mistaking its democratic freedoms for weakness and its consumer-oriented economy for an inability to adapt. They failed to grasp the inherent advantages of a vast, resource-rich, and technologically advanced industrial base, coupled with an innovative spirit and a national will to mobilize. The speed and scale with which the United States converted its economy to war production, the efficiency of its mass manufacturing techniques, and its unparalleled logistical capabilities were all factors that the Axis powers simply could not comprehend or counter. The United States emerged from World War II not only victorious, but also as the undisputed economic and industrial superpower of the world. Its factories, far from being destroyed like those in Europe and Asia, were more productive and advanced than ever before. Its economy boomed, fueled by the innovations and expansions driven by the war effort. The war cemented America's role as a global leader, a position forged not just on the battlefields, but in the shipyards, aircraft factories, and assembly lines that powered the arsenal of democracy. The legacy of this industrial transformation continues to shape global geopolitics and economic structures to this day. A testament to the immense power unleashed when a sleeping giant truly awakens. If you found this deep dive into the American industrial war machine and the strategic miscalculations of the Axis powers compelling, please consider subscribing to the channel for more detailed analyses of military history and technology. Your support helps us continue to explore these crucial turning points and the innovations that shaped our world.